Hey, it's Amy Newmark. I'm sorry to say that my mother died a couple of weeks ago, and I won't be back in the recording studio for a few days. So this week I'm replaying some of my favorite episodes about mothers in honor of my own mother. And I'll be back on Friday with a new episode for you.
Changing your life one story at a time. This is the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast with Editor-in-Chief Amy Newmark.
Hey, it's Amy Newmark with your daily dose of Chicken Soup for the Soul inspiration. It's Wow Wednesday, and I'm going to share a couple of stories with you from one of my favorite writers, Amy Chesler, who goes by the pen name A.B. Chesler on her stories. Amy just had a new baby boy in January, so we sent her our congratulations. She had him right before what would have been her mom's 64th birthday. But unfortunately, her mom is not around to be part of this, as Amy's brother murdered their mother 9 years ago. Amy has written several stories for Chicken Soup for the Soul about her mom, all fascinating, and I'm going to share a couple of them with you today. They definitely fall into that category that I love, truth is stranger than fiction. The first story is titled Love You Forever, and we've published it twice. First in Chicken Soup for the Soul, Messages from Heaven, and then recently in our new Mother's Day book, the one that benefits the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, and that book is Chicken Soup for the Soul, For Mom with Love. So this story is about an event that occurred right after Amy's mother was murdered. Amy had written her eulogy and then tucked it neatly into her mom's favorite children's book, which was called Love You Forever. She put the book in her mother's arms right before they closed the casket. Amy made it through the funeral, and she made it through all those events that keep you going in the days immediately after, and then she broke down. She still needed her mom, and she couldn't believe that her mom was gone. Her mom wasn't going to be there to see her marry. She wasn't going to be there to see her grandchildren. All those major life events would be lived without her mother. Amy wanted a sign that her mother was still watching over her. Weeks went by, and Amy was just stuck. She couldn't do anything. And finally, her best friend forced her to leave the house. She said, just go on a quick trip to Target with me. Just get out and do something. So once they got to Target, Amy just wasn't into it. She didn't want to buy anything. But her friend persuaded her to at least get some candy as a little pick-me-up. Amy picked out something, and she got in the checkout line. And as she stood there waiting, she looked up at the rack of impulse items that they put there. And on top of the shelf, on top of the candy and hair ties and hand sanitizer and all those impulse items, there was a book. And it was a copy of Love You Forever, that children's book that Amy had buried with her mother. So Amy asked the cashier what the book was doing there on top of that candy display, because there were no other books there. And the cashier said that maybe someone had left it there. Maybe they changed their mind about buying it. But then she scanned it at the register, and she told Amy that Target didn't even carry that book. So she had no idea why it was there. She couldn't even ring it up for Amy since it wasn't showing in the system. So she told Amy, just take it for free. Amy cradled that book in her arms, and suddenly things looked a lot better. It was the sign from her mom that she was looking for. Well, then 5 years passed, and of course, Amy was still missing her mom terribly. And she realized one day that she might be able to find her mom on YouTube because her mom had been chosen from the audience to compete on Let's Make a Deal back in the early 1970s. She didn't find a clip of her mother, but she did see a pop-up ad for Let's Make a Deal tickets. Amy filled out the form for tickets, and a few hours later, she got an email with the tickets, and they were for the very next day. So Amy and her husband quickly figured out their costumes, and the next day, Amy, dressed as a pirate, found herself standing in line and then sitting in the audience screaming, and then, miraculously, she was picked from that audience to compete, just as her mother had been picked decades before. It was quite a coincidence. So Amy went up there with the other guest, and the other guest guessed wrong and lost everything. And Amy was standing up there all by herself, and she had a choice. She could take $500 or she could take her chances. And Amy told the host, Wayne Brady, that her mother had been on the show 40 years earlier and that she knew her mom was watching her. And then, with tears in her eyes, she chose door number 2. And she won a car. That's cool, right? I'm so glad I got to share those 2 stories with you. They're quite thought-provoking and very good for our Wow Wednesday podcast. Now, the next time we get together, I'll wow you in a different way with a thought-provoking story that will make you reconsider how you handle offers of help from your friends. I'm Amy Newmark. Thank you for listening to the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast today. And share it with your friends and family and rate it on our iTunes page. And if you'd like to read more about the books I mentioned today, Chicken Soup for the Soul, Messages from Heaven, Chicken Soup for the Soul for Mom with Love, or Chicken Soup for the Soul, Hope and Miracles, please go to our website, chickensoup.com.